Good morning, Mr. Halley. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Are we ready?
Thank you, Chairperson. We are ready to proceed.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I could mention the matter of Major General Zinhle Umnanopi, who was to testify today.
The heat or the noise seems to be quite high today, this morning, but I think they'll attend to it. You just raise your voice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, this is the matter of Major General Umnanopi. As I understand the position, there's an application for a postponement in respect of Major General Umnanopi. I understand that the basis of the postponement is twofold. In the first instance, there's an allegation supported apparently by a report by a medical doctor to the effect that she's suffering from depression, and that's the one basis upon which the application is brought. In the second instance, there's a report to the effect that she has tested positive for COVID-19. We've indicated, insofar as the first ground is concerned, obviously insofar as the second ground is concerned, the report is what it is. It's only come in very recently. We're not in a position to challenge it. We don't oppose the application so far as it goes. We do, however, say that insofar as the first ground is concerned, that she suffers from depression, we would like to have it tested by the Commission's own medical expert. And I've spoken to Mr. Kumalo, who appears on behalf of Ms. Umnanopi. His indication to me is that they are agreeable to such an arrangement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, that's fine. I think that will be important because I do have a distinct recollection that it is not the first time that she provides the Commission with a medical certificate when she's supposed to appear, which says she is suffering from depression.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
It may be once, it may be twice before, but I think certainly it's not the first one, and it's concerning.
It is disconcerting.
Each time she is required to appear, she suffers depression. But you will look into the issue.
We are making arrangements to investigate the issue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
If Mr. Kumalo would like to address
Mr. Kumalo, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My instructions, I confirm what my colleague said, and I confirm also the instruction that we will oblige to the request of my colleague.
Yes.
And then my instructions that we liaise with the registrar in
Yes.
connection with it.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, it would be helpful if there will be cooperation, because if she is genuinely depressed, then that's fine. It's just that it's not the first time that it happens, so one is bound to be concerned. So, but you have indicated that she will cooperate, and I think that's important.
This is the chair.
Yes. Otherwise, I understand certainly the issue of COVID-19. There are many people who are affected, so I think that's the main basis on which we'll postpone. So the application for the postponement of the hearing of the evidence of I think it's Major General, is that right? Major General Zinhle.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Umnanopi. It is Major General of Major General Zinhle Lutricia Umnanopi is granted, and the hearing of her evidence is postponed to a date to be determined.
I'm indebted to the chair.
Thank you, and you are excused,
Thanks,
Mr. Kumalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, that brings us to the testimony of Mr. Sandile July. He's a director at Werksmans. He was one of the authors, or the author, of the so-called Werksmans report, which is dated 24 April 2015. It's been testified to on several occasions before. He has been implicated by Mr. McBride, Mr. Sissoko, and Mr. Kuba in respect of the report that is compiled. You've granted him leave to come and testify before the Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Actually, I think we asked him to come rather than I think he didn't ask to come. We asked him to come and he obliged.
Thank you. That is in fact so.
Yes,
He
yes.
simply placed his affidavit before the Commission.
Yes.
We've asked him to come and testify in
Yes.
support of it.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Oh, yes, I think, Mr. Ngwaitobi, you need to place yourself on record, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I act for Werksmans and Mr. July, together with my learned friend, Ms. Talk. But as your Lordship knows, the practice, I will only play a role only at the end.
Yes, yes, no, that's fine. That's fine, no, thank you. Please administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
My name is Sandile July.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
I don't.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. July, for coming to give evidence when asked to do so. Thank you very much. I don't think that we should take more than 2 hours, at most 3 hours, with Mr. July's evidence, if we focus simply on the real issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I'm just mentioning that so that everybody has an idea what kind of time frame I have in mind. Obviously, the issues must be dealt with. We must do justice to them. But I think the issues are rather narrow.
They are fairly narrow, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, there may be a lot of files. I see a lot of large files behind you, and I see a lot of files in front of Mr. July, but the issues, I think, are rather narrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. July, just for the benefit of the record, you are a director at Werksmans Attorneys, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And you've been in practice for how long?
I've been in practice for 24 years.
Now, you compiled a report, you together with certain other members of your firm compiled a report in relation to a certain letter of instruction that was given to you by the former Minister of Police, Mr. Nkosinathi Nhleko, on the 23rd of February of 2015.
1 second, Mr. Harley. My registrar opened one of Mr. July's supplementary affidavits. I thought that I need to look at the main affidavit, his main affidavit.
His main affidavit appears, Mr. Chair, at Exhibit Y8B.
What's the bundle?
Pardon me,
Number.
Mr. Chair, this is bundle LEA1. I trust by now you're...
Well, it is the right bundle. That bundle The top affidavit is that of Mr. Ntleko, is that
It's
right?
Mr. Ntleko. Mr. July's affidavit is the second exhibit in that bundle, and that appears at page 189.
189.
189, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
You will see this is a response to the affidavit.
Okay. No. I think I was mistaken. I think I read answering affidavit as supplementary affidavit. So
Yes.
it says answering
It's
affidavit. That's the main affidavit.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To place you in the complete picture as far as this affidavit is concerned, it's one of three affidavits that has been filed by Mr. July. The other two affidavits relate in succession to Mr. Kuba and to Mr. Sissoko. They also form part of the file. Much of the evidence is incorporated in this particular affidavit, Exhibit Y8B, but a lot of the information that relates specifically to the other two witnesses appears separately in a separate affidavit. Mr. July, sorry, we were dealing with the fact that you had compiled a report pursuant to instructions that had been given to you by the former Minister of Police. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And the affidavit that you, in fact, filed three affidavits in this matter. One appears in bundle LEA1.
LEA1. Yep.
I think take it out. And I'd like you to turn with me to page 189.
110.
189 of that bundle.
Yep.
And that's the first page of your affidavit. If you would turn to the end of that document, which is at page 376. Do you have that?
Almost there. Yep. 376.
And that's your signature, is it not?
Yep. It's my signature.
Now, I might take you successively to the other affidavits to confirm them as well. They are in the bundle.
Yep.
But I'd like to take you at this point in time, if you will.
Just 1 second, Mr. Halley. I just want to say, Mr. Mukatobi, your team should feel free to create more social distancing. There is enough space even behind. Yeah. We don't want anybody blaming the commission if anything happens after this. Yes, thank you, Mr. Halley. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The specific report that was compiled that's been referred to as the Werksmans report, if you would turn with me to a preceding exhibit at page 113 of 114 of the same bundle. This, Mr. Chair, is an annexure to Mr. Nshleko's affidavit. It's Exhibit Y8A.
114. Yes. And that.
And if you would then go to the end of that document, which is at page 187 of the same bundle.
Yep. And that.
Now, it indicates over here that this report was signed on the 24th of April of 2015 at Santon. This is, in fact, the complete report. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, just to get to the terms of reference that were given to you insofar as this is concerned. And if you do desire, we can go through the specific document if you like. But I'd like you to, and I've indicated to you that perhaps you should have 30 minutes just to explain how this entire event came about, how you were briefed, and ultimately how you handed up the report. What was your interaction with the minister? And specifically the aspects that you filed 3 affidavits, as we've indicated, and specifically the aspects that you think ought to be highlighted before I ask you certain questions relating to the report and to your various affidavits.
Mr. Chair, can I exercise the right to use my 30 minutes if I'm allowed?
Yes,
At the end of the cross-examination.
That's fine.
I'm doing so because I'm mindful of the fact that you want this matter, you've got time pressures.
Yes, yes.
And you want us to deal with the facts.
Yes,
And
yes,
I'm not here to deal with peripheral issues.
yes, yes.
So
yes,
I will
yes.
deal if necessary.
Yeah.
I don't want, if necessary, I want to deal with the facts.
Yes, no, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Very well. You've obviously listened to, no doubt read the transcript, and looked at the allegations that have been made against you by Mr. McBride, Sissoko, and Kuba. Is that correct?
Yes, no, I did.
Now, obviously the aspect that certainly troubled them most is the fact that you came to a conclusion, which is that they were guilty based on the investigation that you had conducted, the witnesses that you had, the witnesses that you had interviewed, and a consideration of the various papers. You came to the conclusion that they were guilty of, that one of the 3 of them might be guilty of the crime of defeating the ends of justice or obstructing justice.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That they are concerned about that.
Pardon me?
You're saying, I didn't hear the first
Well,
part.
Okay, let's go to page 186 to look at what your conclusion is.
No, I know my conclusion.
Yes.
I'm saying you said a statement, there's something
I
that you
think he
said.
didn't hear the whole question.
You would be aware that Mr. Sissoko, Mr. Kuba, and Mr. McBride had expressed unhappiness, particularly about the fact that you came to the conclusion, as expressed in paragraph 6.4.5 on page 186 of your report, that you recommended that one of the 3 of them
Yes.
was guilty, may be guilty and charged criminally for defeating the ends of justice or obstructing the administration of justice, and that disciplinary charges be brought against them in their capacity as employees.
That's one of the concerns. But of course, when they came to the commission, they said a lot of things.
No, that's no doubt true, but that was their primary concern, that you had come to that
Yes.
conclusion.
But there's also a concern why Werksmans was appointed. It's
Yes.
an issue that must be dealt with as to why Werksmans was appointed as a private law firm. So I don't want to limit this to what you are reading now.
Okay.
It's more than that.
Now, let's consider the conclusion that you've come to. You came to the conclusion that
And what page is that?
page 186 of the same bundle,
Page 186.
186, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yep.
You say at paragraph 6.4.5 that in the absence of any information as to which of the 3 co-signatories were responsible for the deletion of information from the first report, we recommend that Kuba, McBride, and Sissoko be charged criminally for defeating the ends of justice or obstructing the administration of justice, and that disciplinary charges be brought against them in their capacity as employees.
Yes.
Now, let's just consider that.
Yeah.
If you could take us through how you came to the conclusion that they were guilty of that specific charge, or rather that you made a recommendation that one of the 3 of them may be guilty of that charge.
Chair, the question is going to be, the answer is going to be a long answer, but I will try.
Yeah, try to.
I'll try to be short.
Yeah,
I'll try to be short.
to give the,
Chair,
the
you will-
gist. Yeah.
I think we are all lawyers here. The mandate, the core mandate of IPID is stipulated in Section 28. That is the core mandate. Anything else that they do, it's secondary to the core mandate. And that core mandate tells you what is it that they're supposed to do. They're supposed to do the investigation. And what do they do with the investigation? You come up with a report. Now, the question now is, what is it that they were investigating? Cuba was investigating rendition. What is that rendition? I know McBride wants to make a rendition an American concept. Rendition is rendition, and it's an illegal transportation of fugitives from one country to another country. When you're supposed to do that, you're supposed to do it through normal processes, which is legal processes. There must be extradition of a person from one country to another country. You don't do it by just arresting people and put it and hand over to other people, to another authority that belongs to another country. Not only that, you also allow the police from another country to come and do policing in South Africa. So for anyone to be able to understand why we recommended what we recommended, you need to understand the issue of what is it that was being investigated. Was there anything wrong with what was done? And we know that they conclude by saying, when I'm saying they conclude, I'm talking about the 18th of March report, which was signed by McBride on the 9th of April, which says only one person, they're not saying there's no rendition, but they're saying only one person is responsible for that. And that person is just a captain. And that captain was able to amass such resources that operation took over 2 months, actually 3. It was November, December, and January. Although 2 happened in November, you needed serious resources that you can't just as a captain, you have them. So that is where the issue comes from. We need to talk about where does the legality start or illegality start? The illegality starts with the rendition. And the question is, who was involved? At what level were they involved? Right? And you then say, what then did IPID do? The IPID then did the investigation. At what point was the recommendation which was made on the 22nd of March was changed? I can tell you now, Chair, had it not because of McBride's employment at IPID, we would be having a 22nd January report. We wouldn't be here. We would be talking about the 22nd January report. And for anybody who comes here and want to tell this commission that those reports mean nothing, those people don't deserve to be in IPID. Because the investigation that is done by IPID is done in terms of
No, I don't think anybody has said those reports mean nothing. I don't think anybody.
You said they have no legal status, Chair.
Well, that might be something else, but
Yes.
I'm not sure that necessarily.
You said they may be ignored.
They mean nothing, you know.
By nothing, there's a context here, Chair. He says, we make reports, and these reports, they don't have to be considered. I've met a number of prosecutors who said to me, that's him now, Cuba. I met a number of prosecutors who said to me, they don't even consider these reports.
Well, that somebody did say, I think, something along those lines. Yeah. I think the impression I have, at least from one or more of the witnesses, is that they were saying, or somebody said, we make these recommendations, but the prosecutors, the NPA, looks at them, but they are not bound by them. They look at them and, I'm paraphrasing now,
Yes.
make out of them what they make.
Yes.
But we make them. I got the impression what that what they were saying is, if the NPA takes a different view, we accept that.
Yes.
If the NPA goes along with what we recommend, that's fine. We don't fight over the recommendations to say, we recommended this, why do you do something else? That's the impression I got from
Yes.
the evidence.
Chair, I can respond there. They are saying two things. They are saying exactly what you are saying about recommendations. Recommendations are recommendations. They can be accepted, they cannot be accepted. That's we accept, we're at the same page. But the second part is a person comes here and proudly tells you that he meets other prosecutors who tell them they don't even look at this recommendation. And you work for the institution, which has been recorded here and which I agree with. That is a constitutional body established in terms of Section 206 of the Constitution, only for that purpose, to do investigations. And those investigations must have reports. And you want to make those reports to look like it's something that, and you proudly say that here, and you don't say anything wrong.
Well,
about that.
you see, we've got to make a distinction as to what the legal position may be about those reports
Yes.
and what may be happening at a practical level between IPID and prosecutors. It may well be that it is true. Those who say they've had a lot of prosecutors who say they don't even consider that, maybe that is true. Maybe a lot of prosecutors don't place much weight on them.
Yes.
But whether that is their right to do that or not, that might be another issue. So it might simply be that at a practical level, there may be a certain attitude towards those reports by certain prosecutors, probably not all, at a practical level.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Chair, the context, the design, why that answer is given to give the impression that why are you making an issue about a report? As if this report binds somebody else when these people can just decide to ignore this report. I am saying, even if that is true, it is wrong for a person who is employed to do that job, comes here to this commission in order to justify what he wants to say, seem to aligning himself with that type of conduct. That's all what I'm saying, Chair.
No, I understand what you are saying, and obviously I have to look at what you are saying. But I don't want us as lawyers and judges to forget that certain people who are put in certain positions may not have the benefit of the legal knowledge that we have when they are not lawyers.
Yes.
They may be adopting certain positions and dealing with matters to the best of their understanding,
Yes.
which might or might not be correct, but
Yes.
they just reflect what they understand to be the position. So that's the only part I want us to remember. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I understand you correctly, and certainly I think in your affidavit you've articulated it quite well, you've spoken about the importance of the IPID reports.
Yes.
And to paraphrase as closely as I recall your statement in your affidavit, you've said the IPID reports mean something.
Yes.
And when you say that, of course, you're making the point that as a matter of law,
Yes.
they've got weight, and you're making the point that they've got to be taken into account. because, as a matter of law.
Yes.
Now, and without delving too much into the legislation per se, if I understand you correctly, you're basing that on your reading of the IPID Act.
Yes, not only that. Chair, there's an IPID Act, 2011 Act. You have regulations. You have SOP, the Standard Operations Procedure. The Act will tell you that there must be regulations. In the regulations, in the same Act, it tells you that in Section 34 of that Act, there must be standard operations procedure. So when you look at these instruments in totality, the procedure explains what the investigator should be done. That's the regulations. The Act explains to you how do you go about appointing the investigators and what are their responsibilities. The SOP then tells you what then internally, although it's an internal document, it's an internal document which comes out as a result of the Act, which sets out how the investigation goes and who has the powers to sign the report. And I'm saying when you look at this issue of the report, you can't avoid to look at how did this report come about, what happened to this report, what was the reason for it to change. Then all those issues cannot be just issues of common sense, are issues that must be answered by looking at the legislation. Yes. So it's not just the Act.
Sure.
Yes.
So if I understand you correctly, you're looking at three instruments.
Yep.
The Act, the regulations, the SOP,
Yes.
and the process by which these reports, the first report was amended, as you say, to give rise to the second report.
The first part is how it was produced,
Yes.
and what makes it a final or complete. Because I want to be very careful about, because people came here and used terminology which is not there. I want to be careful about that because we talk about completed report or preliminary report, right?
Sure.
So, completed investigation or preliminary investigation. And we talk about, there are three types of reports in IPID, Chair. Three types of report. The first report is an interim report. There is no such thing as a provisional report in IPID. There's no such thing as a preliminary report. There's no such thing as a draft report. You have an interim report. After interim report, it becomes what they call final investigative report. The other report is what they call closure report. That closure report talks about the archiving of the document within IPID. Now the investigation is complete, the court have made their decisions on the matter. Now the question is, how do we close this file? Who has the powers to give the final say on the closure of the file? Those are the three reports. Anybody who comes up with another term of a report and talk about draft report and talk about preliminary report, provisional report, I don't know where that comes from.
Okay, you say it's an interim report.
Yes, Chair.
Then after the interim report, which one comes?
It's a final
The final.
investigative
Yes,
report. Those are
yes.
two reports.
Yes, there are two reports.
in
The
the contract.
closure is something
It's an
else.
internal document.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just to say,
Yes.
officially, we have nothing further to do on this matter.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, the reference to interim and final, is that in the legislation or in the act or regulation?
It's in the standard operations procedure.
Yes. Can we go there?
It goes to, if you go to the definitions from the standard operations
Mr.
procedure.
Halley should be able to direct us, but if you
Thank
are
you, Mr.
able
Chair.
to remember that, that's fine.
The first thing is, if I can be of assistance, you could turn to the legislation.
Mr. Halley,
bundle.
your mic is rather
Pardon me,
far
Mr.
from
Chair.
you, so when it's far from you, I can't hear you well.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. Just for your benefit, Mr. Chair, and for the benefit of Mr. July, there's a legislation bundle that has also been part of the Exhibit Y series. Of course, it doesn't bear exhibit number, and that
I think somebody must assist Mr. July to find the liver arch file that has got legislation. Are you able to see it?
Would you say it?
it's a legislation bundle. It would have on the spine legislation and authorities. It's likely to be at the extreme right.
Sure.
Yes, I've got the act.
And then at page
It's at
148 is the
Yeah,
act.
148. Oh, those are the regulations at 148, is that so?
No, this is the statute, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
this is the statute. Oh, I see down about the middle saying regulations under this act.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
No, I was seeing where it says in the middle of page 148, regulations under this act. That's why I was thinking it's regulations.
Yes, I see that. I'm actually not sure why that is so. That's obviously the editors.
At 150 it says in this act unless context indicates
Correct.
otherwise. So it must be the act. There
That
must
is
be
so, Mr.
something. Okay.
Then
I think we're looking at, we should be looking at the regulations, shouldn't we be?
the regulations, if you would turn with me, Mr. Chair, to the file divider 19 at page 445
400?
of the same bundle.
Yes.
Have you got it?
The number?
445.
Did you say 405?
445, Mr. Chair.
445.
That is so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then as far as the standard operating procedures are concerned, if you would bear with me, I'll locate the specific, because there's incomplete standard operating procedures. I want to provide you with a complete set, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. Do you say these regulations are not complete?
No, these regulations are complete.
Are complete,
So
yeah.
we want to look at three instruments that the witness has referred to. It's the Act, the regulations, and the standard operating procedures. As far as the standard operating procedures is concerned, the copy that I had was incomplete. I want to provide Mr. July with a complete copy, if you would just bear with me.
Well, the part relating to standard procedures, is it part of what's not there?
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
The part that deals with the standard, I think the part that we are looking for in the standard operating procedures is the one that talks about what types of reports are contemplated.
Correct.
Is it not in what we have?
It's not because the other witnesses refer to additional aspects. I understand that Mr. July is also going to refer to the additional aspects.
But
So we did
Mr.
a
July, do you happen to have the relevant parts from, maybe he should just read to us the relevant part. Yeah, just switch on your mic and you can keep it on, Mr. July. Yeah, keep it on all the time, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you can just read us to read the relevant parts that talk about the interim and the final reports.
It says, Chair, the case investigative report refers to investigative report that include the interim case investigative
And you are
report.
reading from what part of the standard operating
It's
procedures?
a standard operation procedure.
Do they have
But
like
mine is not.
paragraph or anything?
If
The
you'll bear with
definition
me,
clause,
Oh, okay, all
the
right.
definition clause.
Okay,
yes.
all right. Just read, yeah.
And it talks about the interim report, final case, investigative report, as well as closure report. That's what it says.
Yes.
So the point that I was making in addition to that,
Yes.
you will not read any word here,
Yeah.
even if it's not included here,
Yeah.
which talks to the preliminary report,
Or provisional
which talks
report.
provisional report,
Yes.
which talks to the draft report. You won't
Yes.
find it.
Do the standard operating procedures define what an interim report is?
It does.
What's final?
It
Do you want
does.
to just read
I would
the-
go
the
there.
final? Yeah, please.
Then it defines the interim report, Chair, to mean, let me go there. Interim case representative investigative report means a case investigative report where the investigation has been completed, but where a recommendations cannot be made to the DPP due to outstanding technical reports. However, recommendation may be made to the SAPS. I think that's where I need to explain to you now, Chair.
Fine.
When IPID investigates, there are two possibilities. They investigate the criminal part. They also investigate the misconduct part. So when they investigate the misconduct part, or both, and they've got an interim report, they can't make recommendation on the criminal part. Then that report will qualify as an interim report because it does not have recommendations. It is an interim report. But that very interim report can be regarded as a final report for misconduct purposes. That's why it goes to SAPS, for SAPS to discipline its own employees.
Yes.
Yes, so interim report can be used for two purposes. One is just a reporting without recommendations, which does not go to the DPP, or even if it goes, but it remains an interim report.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I hope somebody in your team, Ms. Halley, will be working to get us
Yes.
the standard operating procedures.
I will
that-
provide it with shortly, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
I just want to make sure I understand that definition, Mr. July. For many of us here in the room, interim means provisional, in the sense that we think about an interim order.
Yep.
It's an order that may need to be confirmed later or discharged. You know, it doesn't represent a final view.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
That's
I agree.
because of our legal
Yes.
background. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to understand is whether that is the same meaning that is contemplated about an interim report in the standard operating procedures, or whether interim report doesn't carry that meaning. In other words, it may be called interim, but for all intents and purposes, it is final. That's what I'm trying to understand
No.
in terms of the standard
No.
operating procedures.
No, it's final insofar as it relates to misconduct part.
Yes.
Insofar as it relates to the criminal part of the investigation, it is not final.
Yes,
It
okay.
is in interim, does not even have recommendations.
Yes.
You don't even know what is this person's prima facie view.
Yes,
But it could mean that it's just you collected information, you've got evidence, and it's still called a report
yes, yes.
because it does not have recommendations.
Yes. So, as you understand the standard operating procedures, the provisions relating to an interim report, the only thing that makes it interim is the absence of a recommendation.
Yes.
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 And does it, as you understand those provisions in the standard operating procedures, do they seem to restrict an interim report to the criminal part of the investigation of the report? Therefore, in other words, it does not contemplate that a report that does not have recommendations or in regard to misconduct would also fall within the definition of interim report. Is that how you understand it?
This is how I understand it, Chair. There's an information that would be missing. It does not just become interim because I want to call it interim. What that information that would be missing is mentioned that there could be technical reports that are outstanding. Because the technical report is outstanding, then it remains an interim for criminal purpose because there's no technical report. But that very report, you can make recommendations without the technical report to the SAPS for purposes of misconduct. Yes.
But for purposes of the criminal part, you can't make a
You can't.
recommendation at that
You can't.
stage. Yes.
You can't.
Therefore, it's interim.
It is interim.
Yes, yes. If and when you get the
The
report,
outstanding information, yes.
then it can be, it ceases to be interim once you have got that and then you put in your recommendation.
Yes.
Oh,
Then it becomes a
yeah.
final report.
Then it becomes a final report.
Once you have that outstanding information, which is
Yes.
specifically mentioned,
Yes.
which is the information that is outstanding,
Yeah.
which makes a report an interim,
Yes.
the standard operation procedure,
Yeah.
make it very clear
Yeah.
what type of information is that.
Yeah.
It's only
A
technical reports
Yes, yes.
that makes it interim.
Okay.
Mr.
So-
Chair, sorry, for your benefit.
Yeah.
The relevant document is at page 1542. This is of LEA 4.
Okay.
LEA 4. And it's at page 1542 of that bundle. It's part of Annex or Exhibit Y8D.
So let's continue, Mr. July, while I'm looking at that.
Yes.
At least on your understanding, if IPID provides a report and in regard to, and the report deals with the criminal part and the disciplinary part, if in regard to the criminal part, there is a technical report still outstanding,
Yes.
then that report is interim,
Yes.
but do the provisions contemplate that you refer to that report as interim, even if in regard to the disciplinary matters, it's final?
It seems to suggest
Yeah.
that because there's an outstanding report,
Yeah.
for the purposes of
The criminal part.
for the purpose of criminal part,
Yeah.
but you can still make recommendations
Yeah.
for the purposes of the
Disciplinary.
disciplinary hearing,
Yes,
misconduct. Yes.
Yes. So once there is outstanding information in relation to the criminal part, And the information that is outstanding is information as contemplated in the definition of interim report, namely a technical report, then that report is interim.
Is interim.
It doesn't matter that in regard to the disciplinary matters, there is nothing outstanding.
Yes.
And on your understanding, if in regard to the criminal part, there is no report outstanding, technical reports outstanding, and there is a recommendation, but in regard to the disciplinary matters, there is still something outstanding, and there is no recommendation on the disciplinary matters. Would that report, on your understanding, fall under interim, or would it not fall?
It will still be interim.
It will still be interim.
Once it does not have
Everything.
recommendations.
Once it does not have a recommendation, yeah.
Even for the purposes of discipline.
Yes.
If it does not have recommendations.
Yes, yes.
It remains an interim.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think for your benefit, Mr. July, the paginated document that you're referring to is at page 1549.
1549, same bundle.
Part of bundle LEA4.
One, you said page
1549.
154.
And this, Mr. Chair, for your benefit, is Exhibit Y8D. It's the response, it's an annexure to the response of Mr. Sissoko to the affidavit of Mr. July.
Okay.
Yeah.
The document starts on page 1542. I think the definition you were referring to is on page 1549.
Well, the final one is at 1548, and then
Yes.
it says interim case investigative report means a case investigative report where the investigation has been completed, but where a recommendation cannot be made to the DPP due to outstanding technical reports. However, recommendations may be made to the SAPS. Well, on that definition, as I understand it, Mr. July, it seems to me that you may not have been accurate or correct when you said, as I understood you, that even if something is still missing on the disciplinary part, it could still be interim. From this definition, it appears to me that what must be missing is a recommendation to the DPP. And obviously, the DPP has nothing to do with misconduct issues.
Yes.
Am I right to think you were not accurate?
No,
Or did I misunderstand you?
I think, Chair, insist that I'm accurate.
I may have misunderstood you.
Yes.
Yes,
What I'm
okay.
saying, Chair, if you read that definition, the first part, it says it's an investigation which has been completed, which
Yeah.
is something that we're going to deal with.
Yeah.
What does it mean, an investigation completed?
Yes.
Then it says, but where a recommendation cannot be made. So investigation is one thing. Now we are talking about the report, but it says that investigation is completed, right? But that completed report, investigation, lacks technical reports,
Yes.
right? But the investigation is completed,
Yes.
but it lacks technical reports.
Yes.
So that report that you are writing is interim.
Yes.
Yes,
No, I accept that.
yes.
I thought when I asked you the question whether if the criminal part has got a recommendation of the report, but there is no recommendation in regard to disciplinary matters, whether it would still be an interim report.
No, I misunderstood you, Chair.
Oh,
No,
okay,
I misunderstood you.
okay, okay,
Because
that's
immediately there's a recommendation, it
Yes.
changes completely.
Yes, okay.
Yes,
no,
it
because I
changes.
wanted to see
No, no,
whether
no.
the only thing that makes it interim in terms
Yes.
of this
Yes,
is the absence of a recommendation because of outstanding
Yes.
technical reports and so on. Okay, no, this part I understand now. Then at page 1548, the definition of final case investigative
Yes.
report, that it says that means an investigative report which documents the entire investigation and contains the conclusion, summary of affidavits and technical reports, written recommendations to SAPS DPP with regard to the actions of the SAPS MPS member
Yes.
concerned. And I see there is a definition of full investigation just below that. Says that refers to
Yes.
where a caseworker takes over a docket, stroke copies of the docket from the SAPS, conducts an independent inquiry and assessment and proceed with any other such inquiry for further evidence to enable him or her to make a finding. Okay, all right. So, final case investigative report, the report must be documenting the entire investigation
Yes.
and must contain the conclusion, summary of affidavits and technical reports, and must have written recommendations to SAPS DPP with regard to the actions of SAPS and MPS member concerned.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So you will notice, Chair,
Yeah.
there are two issues that
Yeah.
makes this report that
Yeah.
you've just read
Yeah.
be different from interim.
Yes.
One is that outstanding information, which is a technical report,
Yes.
is included in the final.
Yes.
And the other thing that has been included now is the recommendations.
Yes.
Once it has the recommendations,
Yes.
what it has technical report,
Yes.
it becomes a final report.
Yes, yes. Of course, an important part of your evidence relates to the question whether the investigation was complete
Yes,
at the time that
exactly.
The report of the 22nd of January was submitted.
Yes.
And it seems from this definition that that's important, because if the investigation has not been completed, then it would not fall within the definition of final. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can I clarify something?
Yes.
There are two issues here involved,
Yeah.
and we need to deal with them correctly.
Yeah.
In the terminology, we must get it right.
Yeah,
What we are busy talking about is the report
yeah,
and the final report.
Yeah.
When we talk about investigations,
yeah.
we are going to deal with that separately.
Yes.
Because
No, Mr. July.
yes,
The definition of final case investigative report
yes,
that we have just looked at refers to an investigative, says that is an investigative report which documents the entire investigation.
I agree.
And entire investigation seems to me to refer to a completed
Yes.
investigation.
yes.
Would you go along with that?
But the drafters of the SOP, they felt it was necessary to make a distinction between the actual report that
Yeah.
you write
Yeah,
and the investigation itself.
yes.
So they make distinction here.
Yes.
That is why I agree with you,
Yeah,
Chair,
yeah.
that in any event, when you have a final report, you would have completed your investigation.
Yes.
But I'm saying the
Yes.
SOP they decided, the drafters, that we are going to have these two terminologies.
Yeah.
The issue about the report defined differently
Yes.
from the actual investigation.
Yes.
So that is why they've got a term
Yes.
called completed investigation,
Yes.
preliminary investigation. But all of it, of course, it will end up to a final report or an
Yes.
interim report.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So that's why I was saying,
Yeah.
when we deal with them, we must first talk about whether the investigation was completed. Because you must remember, Chair, what is the allegation? First is that the allegation is that the investigation itself was not complete. And which is the reason why the docket had to be requested to come back to complete the investigation. Now this SOP explain what is a complete investigation and what is a preliminary investigation. So I'm saying we may have to go back, much as we are on report,
Yeah.
but we may have to go back and deal with the terminology as to what
Yes.
does it mean to have a complete investigation.
That's fair enough. I think we might not be at cross purposes.
Yeah, no, we are not.
We might not be at
Yes.
cross purposes because, as I see it, you can't be said, you can't document in a report the entire investigation
Yes.
unless the investigation has been
Is
completed.
complete. Yes.
You see?
Yes.
So
I agree.
so that's where I'm coming from. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. If you have not completed the investigation, whatever you document is not the entire investigation.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Halley.
In fairness to you, Mr. July, I think you were trying to wrap up or to explain these definitions
Yes.
with reference, obviously, to the body of the SOP. How you're going to apply it in the context of the SOP. Perhaps you
Well,
can
I
just...
just want
you want
to
me
say,
to go?
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I know that I probably took Mr. July off his track, but I think I took him off his track to another very important track.
Very important.
So this discussion, I think, has been very important. But I'm quite happy that you take him back to his
Yes.
track. Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. July, to be fair, I mean, you're welcome, if you think you've been diverted, you're welcome, of course, to go back to where you thought you were going. But I thought you were taking these definitions and you were going to plug them in to the body of the SOP.
Yes. Now, Chair, before I go to the SOP, I will then have to say, to make a reference to a report. You will recall, Chair, that there were two reports. The one report is dated the 22nd of January, 2014. The other one has got 2 dates, of course, in it, but it's what is commonly referred to as 18 March report, right? You can call it March or April, but there are two reports.
Yeah.
Now, how did the first report come about? That's the question. The first report, you will recall, what happened in November 2013. Cuba conducted the investigation and came with a report in 2013. And he submitted that report to Mosing. What I do know, what I've been told, is that all these investigations, most of them, they are so-called prosecutorial investigations. There will always be a prosecutor involved. Now, he does the investigation, Cuba, comes up with a report, and if you look at that report, Chair, it does not have recommendations. That's the November report.
Yes.
On the 22nd, and the prosecutor who was assigned to Cuba then write a memo the same year, November, and stating what is outstanding in the report, right? Then in January, Cuba goes with what he considered to be a final report. He takes it to the prosecution authority, with the docket and say, here is my report. So you guys, you must proceed with whatever you want to do, because the reason why it goes to the prosecution authority is because there's something wrong that has happened. Otherwise, if you make no recommendation to the prosecution authority, there's no reason why the docket should go there, right? It goes there because there's a recommendation. He makes a recommendation, then it gets to Mosing, and Mosing says, no, Kuba, there is something missing in this report. And you will notice, Mr. Chair, the report that I'm talking about had 25 pages. 25 pages. And Mosing writes on that report, is dated 22nd, draft, and say to Kuba, please go and include your own statement. We need to know, how did you go about to produce, how did you go about you producing this report? So your statement must be included in this report. Kuba goes with the report. What he then does, he comes back with the report after 2 days. Now I'm quoting what Mosing says. Mosing says Kuba comes back with the report after 2 days. So 2 days is 24th of January. But now the report has got 30-something pages because Kuba included his statement. Again, it's signed. You remember he signed the first one thinking that there's no need for anything. It has his signature. Mosing write draft. So you'll have two drafts. The November one, which was a draft, which was interim in nature. Then you have what was considered by Kuba as final report, being written draft because it lacked Kuba's statement. Then Kuba included the statement. It comes back on the 24th. But what has not changed is the date of the 22nd. We call it the 22nd January report, when in fact, the report which had Kuba's statement, which was outstanding, was submitted on the 24th. And Mosing said, I did not feel it was even necessary to ask Kuba to change 22nd to 24th. So that report is the final report. Why I'm saying it's a final report? It had, one, the recommendations. Once it has recommendations, it had the technical report. So that's what makes it a final report. On the basis of that, in February, I think around the 8th of Feb, 2014, Mosing writes a memo and say, now the investigation has been finalized. Please find the following. Now that memo is going to DPP Chauke in Johannesburg for a decision whether to prosecute or not to prosecute. But the status of that report is final. It's final in every respect. So he lists the documents that are there. You have been told that no, but let me not rush and get to what was missing, because I will tell you the versions that have been given about that report, various versions.
Yes. 1 second. There is a file that to which I referred during Mr. Ntlego's evidence that I'm looking for, the one that has got handwritten notes at the top. You need water, and they didn't give you water.
I need some water.
They should have put some water.
That's Mr. Gatt's hard strategy. He wants me.
He asks for it and then complains when I give it to him.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine. Well, we are about to take the lunch break.
The tea adjournment.
Not lunch break, tea break.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I could be of assistance. Which bundle are you looking for, Mr.
Well,
Chair?
I don't know the name of the bundle, but I can deal with deal with this. There is a memo, and maybe the one you are referring to is the one that was written by Advocate Mosing
Yes, Chair.
to Mr. Chauke
Yes.
and to the Ms. Jiba.
Nomgcobo-Jiba, yes.
Yes, Nomgcobo Jiba, where, as I understand it, he says something that suggests to me that the report, there was still something outstanding here that he wrote. I think in terms of the notes I made here, which I also read to Mr. Ntlego, it's the memo of 13 February 2014, and in paragraph 6.3 of his memo, I say Mr. Mosing said in part, when talking about his view, that Major General Sibia did not appear to have been involved.
Yes.
He said this following, and I quote, "The cell phone evidence, however, does not corroborate his presence during the operations. This can be looked at again more closely after an expert has been procured to analyze the cell phone data. This could not be done by the time of writing this report, despite it being pointed out to the investigating team." Close quotes. So when I read this, the impression I had was, well, Mr. Mosing is saying there is a need for an expert to analyze cell phone records. I've told the investigators to get that done, but they have not got that done. If that is factually true, my inclination would be then that report of the 22nd could not be said to be final. What do you say to that?
Let me tell you why, Chair,
Yes.
that report was final.
Yes.
That report was final, one, recommendations. You will see in the list of the documents that Mosing is forwarding, he writes there's a handwritten report that is referring to there. That handwritten report is the report that was provided, but in handwritten, that you cannot locate Sibia in deep sleuth. That information is known to Kuba, is known to Mosing, but is in handwriting, right? He writes it in the list of the documents that is submitted. But now here's an issue. He then says, we can't be held back by this. Now the context of that statement, and Mosing should be called, the context of that statement, you've got two witnesses, I think three witnesses. The two witnesses who were part of the investigation, Campbell and somebody else, and one of the civilian, the victim, one of the people who were victims, the family members, who claim that they've seen Sibia. Now, Mosing says, this issue, we can't conclude it. But here is the report. It's handwritten. It says Sibia was not in deep sleuth. So let's go now to the March, just to visit March for the purposes of this. You go to the March report, which they considered now to be final. What is different in terms of analysis? It's the same, but the difference is that it is typed. That's all. It's that same report which says Sibia was not in deep sleuth, although the witnesses, 2 or 3 witnesses say he was there. But that report, Kuba collects it. It is now typed report. You are not going to find anything in the March report which tells you, as a result of an analysis, what was submitted has changed. Is the same information which says Sibia was not involved in deep slot.
Okay, now, I think we seem to be on the same page with regard to the principle that if there is still a report outstanding, then you would accept that the report is not final.
I would accept that.
Yeah, you'd accept
I
that.
would accept that.
I think that is important. So what then remains is that you are saying there was no report outstanding here.
Yes.
The part that I've read from
Yes.
Mr. Mosing's memo is that actually he puts it as there's still analysis to be done, you know. Now, you would then say, based on your evidence or what you have said, you would say, I imagine, he is wrong to say there is analysis to be done.
Yes.
Because you say the analysis has been done, it is contained in a handwritten report.
Yes.
Whereas he says the analysis is still to be done. I don't know whether in your investigation you dealt with him, you kind of confronted him with it to say, how could you say the analysis is outstanding because the analysis has been done? And if you did, what did he say?
If I remember well, Chair, the context was explained, which is you've got two versions. One, you've got an analysis report, which is handwritten, which says Sibiya was not in deep slot. You've got witnesses that say Sibiya was in deep slot. But the report which says Sibiya was not in deep slot, it is there.
Yes.
Therefore, the statement that he makes, it cannot be divorced from the context. It could be that he wanted to address how do we deal with this issue that there are witnesses that would have seen Sibiya, but we have an analysis which says Sibiya was in Pretoria when this happened.
No, I understand that part. I'm asking the different question, whether during your investigation, when you had to interview Mr. Musing and being aware of this part of his memo, whether you did say to him, but how can you say in this memo that there is analysis outstanding from a technical expert or whatever, because here is the analysis, it just happens to be in handwritten form. Is that something you raised or not really?
No, not in that fashion.
Directly.
Not directly in that
Not
fashion,
directly.
but
Okay.
because we picked up
Yes.
what he was explaining.
Yes, yes.
That, no. His understanding, which is why he was saying it's final.
Yes.
You must look at how he starts
Yes,
his memorandum.
yes,
He starts by saying now is final, the
Yes.
investigation has been finalized.
yes, yes.
Now it's for you to take a decision.
Yes.
And you remember, Chair, we are talking a very experienced advocate
Yes.
who has been allocated dealing with specifically with this special project, who was chosen deliberately to deal with this matter. So he knows what he's doing. So when he says this issue can still be dealt with, and that's exactly the attitude that was adopted by Advocate Baloyi and Mzinyat when they were given the same reports by Mr. Ngasane. Because Mr. Ngasane was also confronted by the same thing. Say, I've got these two reports. So what do we do?
But of course, well, I don't know how experienced Mr. Mosing is, of course, but I take what you say, that
Yes.
he's an experienced prosecutor, advocate, precisely because he is experienced and precisely because he seems to have been part of this investigation from its inception.
Yes.
It kind of surprises one if he says there is analysis still outstanding, if in fact that is not so.
Yes.
You understand that?
I understand that,
Yes,
but I'm
yes.
saying, Chair, you
Yes.
can't read that paragraph in isolation.
Just say that again.
I'm saying that paragraph can't be read in isolation.
No, obviously, it
Yes.
shouldn't be read in isolation. It shouldn't
And
be
we
read,
also
yeah.
had the benefit
Yes,
of
yes,
speaking to him.
Yes. Yes, you see, this particular issue, what I'm saying, it's just that it's important to come to a point where at a factual level,
Yes.
he was correct
Yes.
in saying there was an analysis still outstanding. Because I think you and I have agreed that if factually he was correct, then the report of the 22nd of January was not final. But you have said he was not factually correct because there was analysis that he was talking about. It just happened to be in handwritten form. That's what you said.
And that view, Chair, is
Yeah.
confirmed even by the subsequent report.
Yes, yes.
That there was no analysis.
Yes, yes.
There was no further analysis
Yes,
that was done.
yes. Yes, no, that's why it becomes important that you tell me what you can tell me
Yes, Chair.
to show that there was no analysis
No
that was
Outstanding at all.
And then, of course, the next question would be to say, one, it may be legitimate for you to say, well, the report of the experts may have been in handwritten form, but I think the fact that it's not typed doesn't render the report not final. Maybe Mr. Kuba, maybe Mr. McBride, maybe somebody else might say, well, that's where we differ. We think it makes a difference. Then we know where the differences are. So it's a
Yes.
question of just
Yes.
identifying
Yes.
where the differences are.
You see, where they fail, they don't show you, Chair. They don't show this commission. After that analysis, what other analysis did they get after the handwritten one? For them to be able to produce the 18th January, because if it was outstanding, they should be telling you, Chair, and say, we then obtained, after the 22nd of January, an analysis which was outstanding, which informs the report, the report
Yeah.
of March.
Yeah.
There is no such thing.
Okay, all right. Mr. Halley, I'm sure you're looking at both of us and saying we are having this conversation by ourselves. But
No, Mr. Chair.
after the tea break, I'll let you continue.
Mr. Chair.
It's just that for me, these are some of the really important issues.
Yes, sir.
And I want to be sure that I understand exactly where Mr. July stands. And I raise my own issues with him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I think let's take the tea break. We are at 22 minutes past 11. Let's take a break and return at 22:12.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We adjourn.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Okay, let's continue. You may proceed, Mr. Halley. Your mic.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, for the benefit of the witness and for yourself, Mr. Chair, there's a bundle which is marked as Exhibit Y6. That's one of the historic bundles that doesn't follow the current formatting. And the specific document that we're referring to is at page 322 of that bundle.
Yes.
It would perhaps be useful if we all spoke from the same page.
Yes, okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I, before Mr. Harley takes me back to where we were, to deal with that page? Because I want to address this issue about the outstanding information.
Yeah.
If you read paragraph 2,
Okay, which bundle?
the Y,
The one that has just been
Y6,
handed
322.
up to me.
Yes.
Okay, what page?
Page 322.
322. Yes. Oh, yeah, that's the memo to which
Yes.
I was referring.
Yes.
Yes.
He starts by giving the purpose of the memo. I'm not going to read that. Then paragraph 2, it gives the background. He says the investigations, supposed to say investigation, has
Yeah.
now been finalized,
Yes.
and a report from the IPID has been submitted for purposes of considering the merits of the case.
Yes.
The case docket comprising of 2 liver arch files, together of other files containing the cellular phone data and evidence obtained from the computer belonging to the DPCI, is also enclosed. So I want Chair to bear in mind when we talk about that cell phone data, because it's going to come up every now and then.
Yeah.
Because that is the issue.
Yes.
Whether the cell phone data, what is it?
Yes.
That was outstanding about
Yes.
the cell phone data.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we can just, for the sake of completeness, see if we can identify the one that I also mentioned. I think 6.3. It is at page 327.
Yes.
Says the involvement of other senior police officers could not be established beyond reasonable doubt, including the head of the DPCI, Gauteng, Major General Sibia, who it is alleged was present during the first 2 operations, but the evidence is not conclusive. He is also responsible for the tombs in Gauteng, and it is unlikely that the operations were carried out without his knowledge. The cell phone evidence, however, does not corroborate his presence during the operations. This can be looked at again more closely after an expert witness has been procured to analyze the cell phone data. This could not be done by the time of writing this report, despite it being pointed out to the investigating team. Okay, I just was saying for the sake of completeness. Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Halley, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, just to be clear, as far as this is concerned, Mr. July, if I understand correctly, what Advocate Melsing is said to you in an interview is that at this point in time, i.e. 22 January 2014, or 24 January 2014 to be more specific, the analysis of the cell phone records was complete, except then the only difference between what was in existence at that point and what was in existence at the later point, i.e. 18 March 2014, was the fact that the report was compiled, or the analysis had been done in a handwritten form, and subsequently it was done through a typed document. Do you understand that correctly?
No.
Okay.
Mosing does not talk about, even during our interview, he does not talk about the handwritten and the typed version. Mosing, during our interview, says they had the phone analysis, which says Mr. Sibia, General Sibia, was not in deep slot. But there is this evidence by these witnesses which say he was there. As we understand when we spoke to him, that issue is an issue that can still be dealt with at a later stage. And even, I was about to talk about Baloyi. Baloyi and Mzinyati, they say the same thing. They say when they realize that there are witnesses that have seen Sibia, but the cell phone record places them somewhere. They said it is in the nature of the prosecution that you will never, but until you go to court, be in a position conclusively say the investigation is completed. Because there will always be that information which would be required. So the point that I'm trying to make is, although there was this contradiction, if that contradiction is not resolved at some point, then they will have to decide what they do with that.
Yes. Now, if I understand correctly...
I think the answer to your question, because Mr. July did answer it, but I think partly because you asked him whether Mr. Mosing said a certain thing to him during the interview. He said, no, that's not what he said, and I think that's correct. But I think what he made clear earlier on, Mr. July, was that the context was different when they had a discussion. It wasn't a question of asking him directly, why do you say there's analysis then outstanding? Because here is the analysis. He didn't ask him directly, but they were focusing on the fact that there were certain witnesses who said they had seen Mr. Sibia there, and yet the cell phone records suggested something else.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular memorandum of the 13th of February 2014, he speaks of, on paragraph 2, the paragraph that you refer to on page 322, there Mr. Mosing, or Advocate Mosing, I believe it is, speaks to the cellular phone data and evidence obtained from a computer. So he seems to be speaking there of data, as opposed to, which implies that it may be raw data, as opposed to an analysis of that data. Do I understand that? Do I misunderstand that?
No. I think you understand it very well. But I don't know what is it that you want me to answer. But you understand it very well. It's a cell phone data. This is what happened, Chair. Cuba asked for all your telecommunications, your cell phone companies, Cell C, Vodacom, MTN, to provide with information. He has got the information. He takes the information to people to analyze that information. They look at the cell phones, who called who, and who SMS'd who. They finalize that. That issue is finalized. That there's a number of SMSs on the 5th of November, 2010, that were from Maluleka to Sibia, from Sibia to Dramat and Libya, right? That is a data. That's one form of analysis. The other analysis was to locate the people who are implicated. Where was Sibia at the time? Precisely on the 6th of November, 2010. Where was Sibia? That is the information I'm saying was in handwritten, it was present, it was known to anybody, to everybody, and was put in the list by Mosing in the document and listed the documents that are submitted as handwritten. I don't know which paragraph.
Are you referring to a specific document now?
You are looking for the handwritten,
The way he says handwritten, where Mosing.
or where he says
listed-
draft,
Where is listing, yes, where is listing the document that is
that
submitted?
he is attaching, is enclosing.
There's no attachment,
Yeah.
but is listing. It could be that, yes. But that document was attached. But that document, that is why he comes to the conclusion
Yes.
that we know now that Sibia was not there.
Yes.
And you can't do that by analyzing SMSs. No, you
Yes.
can't.
Yes.
You have to do another analysis
Yes.
for you to be able to say, where was Sibia at the time?
Yeah.
So that was done.
Yes. Yes, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just moving ahead, so you've got the 22 January report.
Yep.
There are in fact 3 22 January reports, as you're aware of.
Yes, I can explain that, yes.
One has got the word draft on it. One was in fact emailed by Mr. Kuba to Mr. Sissoko.
Yep.
And the third one is the one that you say was
Signed,
delivered to to Advocate Mossing
Yes.
on the 24th of January.
Yes.
Now, the first one, which has the word draft on it, the word draft is inscribed there by Advocate Mossing.
Yes,
And that's because, according to Advocate Mossing, according to the interview that you had with Advocate Mossing, he says he wrote draft there because the statement of Mr. Kuba hadn't been, as the investigator,
Yes.
hadn't been included.
yes,
Now, at that stage, i.e. on the 22nd of January, when it seems everybody, it's common cause as between Mr. Mossing or Advocate Mossing and Mr. Kuba that he delivered the 22nd of January report. You saying that that report was not a final report, if I understood you correctly in your discussion with the chairperson,
which one is that?
the one that had draft on it.
The one that had draft on it, yes, that's what I'm saying. It does version of Mosing, and I think it does say that even in his affidavit.
Sure.
Yes,
So, but I'm trying to understand what you're saying. You're saying that it was not a final report.
Can I explain this? That report was not final because, as we have read, Chair, the final report requires recommendations. So there were no recommendations. So Kuba was asked to go and add recommendations. So that's why it took him just 2 days to go and add recommendations, comes back with recommendations, which is the same report, but it did not have recommendations. Then it became a final report because it has the same date
Sure.
of the 22nd.
I think, lest we be confused, perhaps you should turn to the document or the bundle which is marked LEA2.
2.
That's correct.
Yep.
And you've attached several documents to your affidavit.
Yep.
This is part of your affidavit,
Yep.
which is Exhibit Y8B. If you could turn with me to page 645.
645. 645. Yep. And that,
Is that the document that you're referring to?
yes.
And you would see the word draft inscribed in manuscript
Yes.
at the top of that page. Now, if you would turn with me to page 670 of the same bundle. Have you got it?
600 and,
670, Mr. Chairperson.
or at the end?
That's right. Do you see that, sir?
670.
Yes. Have you got the page?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And if you look at the heading, which is on the preceding page, which is at page 669, can you read that heading to us?
I'm sorry, what did you say,
read
Mr.
what?
Ducat?
There's a heading at the foot of the page,
670.
on the preceding page, which is on page 669.
Yes, okay.
Recommendations.
That's right. And if you could go over to page 670,
Yes.
could you read that into the record?
Based on the available evidence, the Independent Police Intelligence Investigative Directorate recommends that Lieutenant General Dramat Major Sibia, Maluleke, Constable Khadebe, Captain S. Inkosi, Warrant Officer Mokwe be charged criminally of kidnapping, defeating the ends of justice, assault and theft, only applicable to Captain Maluleke, Warrant Officer Makwe, Constable PM Khadebe, and Captain S. Inkosi.
And it's signed, is it not?
Yes.
So this document was in fact signed, and it had a recommendation.
Yes.
The only point I'm making is that you nevertheless regarded this as an interim report.
No,
Or do I misunderstand you?
no, I think you are missing the whole point.
Was this a final? I asked you if this was a final report.
It was a final report
Oh.
because it had a recommendation according to COBA.
Maybe let's get this, there may be a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Mr. Kuba gave Mr. Mosing a report.
Yes.
Which, as you understand the position, Mr. Kuba regarded as final.
Yes.
And there was nothing further to be done by him, as you understand the position. Mr. Mosing identified that the report did not include Mr. Kuba's statement as the investigator.
Yes.
And then asked Mr. Kuba to submit his statement. And he wrote on the report draft. And you say, as I understand the position, the only reason why Mr. Mosing wrote or could have written draft
It's Mr.
was
Mosing.
because of Mr. Kuba's outstanding statement.
Statement, yes.
The next question must therefore be, at the time that Mr. Mosing asked Mr. Kuba to submit his statement, was this report that he marked draft? Did it have a recommendation?
Yes.
It did, yeah.
It did.
Yeah, yeah.
These are the recommendations that I've just read.
it-
Yes.
This report that we are looking at now is exactly the report that Mr. Mosing wrote draft on.
Yes.
It had a recommendation already. The only thing that was outstanding as far as Mr. Mosing was concerned was Mr.
Kuba's
Kuba's statement.
Yes.
And as you understand the position, did Mr. Kuba in 2 days submit their statement, and that statement would have been made part of the report?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. So I was actually asking you from your perspective, because I understood, correct me of course if I'm wrong, I understood you to be saying this was not a final report. And I was trying to understand that response. Now, I might have, of course, I might have interpreted what you were saying to mean that it was an interim report. But I'm asking you again, was this a final report? Not from Mr. Kuba's perspective, from your perspective. That's what I'm asking.
Chair,
Yes.
we've defined what the final report is.
Yes.
Final report with recommendations.
Yes.
It's a final report.
Yes.
But what was missing with this final report
Yes.
is Mr. Kuba's statement.
Yes.
So it was a final report,
Yes.
but what was missing was Kuba's statement.
Yes, I think what you want to say is, from your point of view, it met the requirements of the definition of
No,
a
it
final
did.
report in the standard operating procedures.
It did.
Is that right?
It did.
That's what you are saying. So from that point of view, it was final.
It was final.
But you accept that according to Mr. Musing, Mr. Kuba's statement wasn't there. But you are saying if you look at the definition of a final report in the standard operating procedures, it met those requirements, that
Because you see,
definition.
what I can understand was missing to Mr. Musi is that you come to this conclusion, but you don't tell us. Give us your statement. Give us your statement. Tell us what did you do? What did you consult with? Who did you take statements with? That's what was missing.
What may be, and maybe Mr. Halim might be intending to deal with that, to the extent that the definition of final, I think it's called final case investigative report, to the extent that it says such a report must document the entire investigation, I think the question might be whether, as long as the investigator's statement is not there,
Yes.
whether that part is met. Well, what would you say on that?
Chair, it would seem
Of
like...
course, it would have become complete
Yes.
in 2 days' time.
Yes.
It might not have been.
Yes. It seems that is a question of practice.
Yes, yes.
Practice as compared to what constitutes a final
Yes,
report.
yes,
What
yes.
constitutes a final report are recommendations.
Yes,
But the
yes.
people who read recommendations, they are saying, no. For practice purposes, we want to know
Yeah.
from you, how did you go about
Yes,
doing
yes.
the report?
But just to go back on our understanding,
Yes.
because I don't want to confuse you in terms of what you are saying. On the definition of final case investigative report as it appears in the standard operating procedures, would you say that if the investigator's statement is not there, the report is complete, is final and meets the requirements? Or would you say, no, it doesn't meet the requirements, but when Mr. Kuba submitted his statement, then that report met all the requirements or the definition of final case investigative report? That's when it became final.
Chair, it says if you want to deal with issues of recommendation, because it has the recommendations and it has got all the information that is required, then it becomes a final report. Kuba makes the analysis, he comes to the conclusion and he makes recommendations. So it is a final report.
Even without the investigator's statement?
Even without the investigator's statement in terms of the definition.
Yeah, okay.
But
Yeah,
it would seem they've got a practice
yeah.
that the report which has got recommendation must have your own statement.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Halim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, insofar as the investigation was concerned, we had 3 reports which were dated the 22nd of January. There was a report that had been emailed to Mr. Sissoko, which was also dated the 22nd of January of 2014. And that had been emailed to me on the 23rd of January of 2014, according to the investigations you had done. Is that correct?
I know of that report that Kuba says he referred the report to Sissoko. But the report that was signed is the report which was signed on the 24th.
Don't speak away from the mic.
Oh,
Yes.
Chair, I'm saying, I'm aware of Kuba saying he emailed a report on the 23rd to Sissoko for the purposes of the Secretariat, because they are required to give to the Secretariat. And as we know, I think I would take it as common cause that we know that this investigation was conducted in terms of Section 28H. And the 28H makes a reference to that is a kind of a report which investigation must happen as a result of a referral, either by the executive director, initiated by the executive director, or is initiated by the MEC or the minister or the secretary. And the secretary is the secretary of the secretariat for the police. And this was referred to IPID already with a case number. So Kuba was obliged in terms of the law to give that report to the secretariat. So Kuba does say, of course, in his affidavit that he filed, something that he did not mention to us when we interviewed Kuba. You can go through the interview that we had with Kuba. We had 3 interviews with him. We only pick up the issue of the report which was emailed to Sissoko, which is dated the 23rd, which we'll talk about that another time, whether Sissoko knew about the report, whether he knew or he did not know about the first report.
Very well. Now, at the time when the first report is completed, I'm talking now about the 22nd of January report.
Yes.
And we know that there are 3 reports, 2 of which are signed, 1 of which is emailed. You say it was emailed on the 23rd, and you say the second 22 January report, which contains the investigator's statement, is in fact given to Advocate Mossing on the 24th of January.
Yes.
So it should probably be referred to as the 24th January report, but we've referred to it throughout as the first report.
Yep.
So when you refer in your affidavit to the first report, you're referring to the second signed report.
The one
dated.
with the statement. Yes.
Correct. Now, at that stage, of course, quite apart from the issue relating to the data analysis or the cell phone data analysis, quite apart from that issue, there are several statements that are outstanding, warning statements that are outstanding. Is that correct?
When?
As at the 22nd of January, whether it be on the 22nd of January or the 24th of January, as you say.
Oh, now we are moving to the warning statements now. Chair, I don't want to deal with, there were several warning statements.
Just say that again.
I'm saying, Chair, I don't want to deal with several warning statements. I want to deal with what Kuba said was missing.
Okay.
The statements that were missing, not several. He says, Kuba, what was missing was the warning statement of Sibia, was the warning statement of Maluleka, was the warning statement of Leon Fester. It was the warning statement, which is not a warning statement, at the same time, of Kobushiane. And Kobushiane, I must remind you, Chair, is the secretary of the Secretariat. So Kuba says these are the warning statements that were missing. Let's deal with the warning statement of Sibia. The warning statement of Sibia, after the submission of the report on the 22nd, somewhere on the 13th of February, out of the blue, Kuba writes a letter to Sibia. He says to Sibia, based on your conversations that you had with Sissoko, I am writing to you to provide me with a warning statement. And here are the questions. The warning statement comes back. It's now the 28th of February.
What date? 28 February?
28th Feb.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. That one, that's the first warning statement. What we do
So
know...
just to be clear, we're talking about 28 February 2014.
Yeah, 2014. That's the first warning statement. The second warning statement, I don't know the circumstances on which it was obtained, but what we know is that it says nothing. It's silent. Maybe I should go back to Sibiya as to what does it
Whose
say.
one is that one?
That this one is Maluleka.
Okay.
Yes. Maluleka says nothing. He says, I exercise my right to remain silent. Then Sibiya, what did Sibiya say? Sibiya says exactly what he said in 2011, in a nutshell. You will recall, Chair, or maybe you will not recall, because there's certain things that you were not told, which is 2011, there's an internal process by the SAPS to know about this rendition. Who exactly was involved in this unlawful rendition? And that investigation is as a result of the Sunday Times report of October. Sunday Times around October publishes an article which says people have been killed on their way.
Hang on, Mr. July. I'm not sure whether we need to go too far on that because of the question.
Yeah.
I think you wanted to simply say
Yes.
you would like to focus on the specific warning statements.
The importance, Chair, the problem with, I may sometimes come across as a person who, because there are certain questions and answers that would want you to go back.
Yes, no, I understand
what
that.
exactly
No,
happened.
I understand. I understand.
So now you have these 4 warning statements. The other warning statement, I'm not sure if the Leon one was obtained. Then there's a Kobushiane one. And if you read the Kobushiane statement, all what Kobushiane says, she says, listen, after 2011, I was asked by the minister to determine what are the legal implications for South Africa, both internationally and locally, for this rendition. What the reason why? What are the implications of this unlawful rendition?
Yeah.
So Kobushiane, that's the statement about Kobushiane. So you tell me Kobushiane's statement, what does that have to do with the conclusion whether Sibiya Dramat must be charged? A person who decides to remain silent, how can that have an impact on the recommendation? The statement by Sibiya, it's confirming what he has already been saying, which is, I did not get myself, I was never involved in the rendition. But what Sibiya is accepting though, is accepting that he provided personnel to undergo the operations. Sibiya accepts that he was being briefed. And that statement, warning statement, that's the one that I emailed to Mr. Halley last night. Because I looked for it in the docket that was provided. I couldn't find it. And you will see in the report it's summarized. It's one-liner or 2 sentences, which says Sibiya denies having been involved. But Sibiya writes a statement through the lawyers, and then he sends another statement which is written conclusion. So all of that, when you read it, they don't have impact on the recommendation.
Mr. Ali?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, you make the point that these statements and or rather the activity on the part of Mr. Kuba by writing to Ms. Kobushiane, by writing to Sibiya, you make the point that that is out of the blue. I just want to understand what you were referring to, what the implication is as far as that is concerned.
Chair, I start my affidavit by saying I'm
Remember
not a truther.
not to move away.
I started my affidavit by saying I'm not a truther. And I explain what the truther is. And the truther is a person who's a conspiracy theory. right? But I've got my own reservation. The out of the blue is the reservations that I have about around the 13. There's now an issue about the warning statement because McBride is coming. They know that McBride is coming on the 3rd. So McBride will come on the 3rd and say the investigation was still outstanding. That's the whole reason. Why out of the blue?
What is the factual basis for you to say that they knew that he would come and say that?
Chair, this is informed by what then happens when McBride starts on the 3rd of March. What does he do when he starts on the 3rd of March?
No. As I understand the statement you made, it is that prior to Mr. McBride starting at IPID,
Yes.
they knew that he would come
Yes.
and take this position.
Yes.
So my question is, what is the factual basis for you to say that?
They knew
Uh-huh.
that they
Before
knew
he
that
came.
he was coming.
Yeah, that he.
No, remember, the appointment, Chair, was already confirmed somewhere in December.
No, I
2013.
understand that. But the part that I'm interested in is, if I understood you correctly, is suggest that they knew what position he would take
Yes.
on this case once he arrived.
Yes.
So I'm asking, what is the factual basis for saying that?
Chair, I'm saying, if you look at what then happens when Mr. McBride gets to IPID, you cannot ignore the activities of what happened after the report was already considered by the person who was submitting it, considered to be final.
Maybe let's go back. When you say they knew, who are you talking about? Before Mr. McBride
I'm
came?
talking about Sissoko.
About
and
Sissoko
Kuba.
and Kuba, yes.
Yes, I'm talking about the
Yes,
two.
okay. No, I just wanted us to clear that.
Oh, yes, sorry, Chair.
Yes,
that's what I meant.
But what is it that you can tell me that informs your statement that before Mr. McBride arrived at IPID, they knew that upon his arrival, he would take a particular position on this case?
Chair, you have to read and understand what happened when he came in. He's on record, Mr. McBride, and all of them, saying when McBride arrived at IPID, he asked for high-profile matters. There were 3 high-profile matters that time. It was Marikana, it was Ketomena, it was this rendition. What happens? These people were called to a meeting to say, we want you to give me the update. But you won't hear anything, no update about the other 2. Not even to the person who was called to come to give evidence, to give update about Ketomena. That person, when we interviewed him, nothing did he say, according to Mr. Angas, about Ketomena. All what he talked about, he was asked to take over this rendition because McBride suspected that there was something not right, which was done by Kuba at the time. That's what he says, right? When you look at Angas and say, what is it then that the update that we were supposed to give? There is no update. Mr. Khamanyana, who was doing Marikana and other investigators, we know now that those reports were filed with IPID, with NPA.
Yes, but you see, Mr. July, I would have a certain understanding if you say to me, it's interesting, then upon arrival at IPID,
Yes.
Mr. McBride behaved in the following way. That's one way. But it's different when you say Sisoko and Kuba knew before Mr. McBride arrived at IPID that when he arrived at IPID, he would take a particular position
Yes.
on the matter. So that's the part I was.
Oh, yes, yes, I hear you,
say.
Chair. I hear.
What's the
There
factual
might
basis?
be, there might be disjuncture. Maybe I should not approach it in that way then.
Yes.
Maybe
yes.
I should then stick on, it was out
On,
of the blue.
on
Let me
the facts,
address-
as you said
Yeah,
earlier on.
Let me address then why the out of the blue on the 13th of
I'm sorry. Just say that again. You looked at him and then I didn't hear.
I was saying, let me then address the out of the blue.
I'm sorry, what is the out of the blue part?
I had asked earlier on why the witness had indicated previously that the letters
Or
that,
the
had
one
been
statement.
that had been written to Mr. Koboshiani, to Mr. Sabia, General Sabia, why did he consider that to be out of the blue?
Oh, yes, but let's move out of this area in a proper way.
Yep.
Can I accept that you don't have a factual basis to say Mr. Sisoko and Mr. Kuba knew before Mr. McBride came what position
What position he was going to
accept
take.
it. Okay, all right.
But it's very interesting to note that.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
okay. Mr. Ali?
So to take that to its logical conclusion, the fact that specifically that Mr. Kuba had attempted to get these additional statements from General Sabia, from Ms. Irish Koboshiani, that you're not suggesting, and you can't suggest as a fact, that Mr. McBride had factually got involved in the investigation before the 3rd of March, in other words, before his arrival.
I can't say as a matter of fact, but whether it happened, I don't know. Yeah, can't say as a matter of fact.
And you have no evidence, as I understand it from your affidavit. You have no evidence. There's nobody that's told you that that happened. You've not seen an email to that effect.
We
Is
are
that
not
correct?
even dealing with it in my affidavit.
Yes, yes.
I'm not even dealing with it, but I'm raising it here because we are talking and people have been allowed, like McBride, to say things that were not in the affidavit.
I must say that I do wish us to go to the question of the actual findings at some stage. So
Pardon me, Mr. Chair?
I would like us to go to the findings of the Workman's report
Yes.
as soon as you are able
Thank
to.
you. Well,
In terms of, because as I see it, I mean, the one point is that this commission is not looking at whether his findings were correct or not correct. That's not
Indeed,
what we
Mr.
are
Chair.
doing, and it may well be that they may be unjustified and or justified. That might still not,
That is so, Mr. Chair.
take us anywhere. But one is looking at whether there is anything that shows anything beyond that. But it's just that in order to get there, sometimes you have to look at the
preceding
basis.
events.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, remember my initial question to you was how you came to the conclusion that you did. You've explained quite a bit.
Yes.
What I was really interested in was actually how you came to that conclusion with reference to your report. If you could take us through that process, that was the question that I was really interested in.
The conclusion, there are a number of conclusions that we are making, Chair, in the report.
No, I think we won't be interested in all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, we will only be interested in some.
Yes.
Yeah.
I refer the witness specifically to a conclusion in relation to the defeat in the ends of justice.
Oh, yes. Chair, how we come to that conclusion?
I'm sorry, which one is that? I missed.
So,
Defeating the
Mr. Chair,
ends
if we can turn to page 186 of bundle LEA1, it's exhibit Y8A, and it's the Werksman's report, and specifically at page 186 of that bundle.
Is that why?
Is it this one?
Is that why?
Let's take this away. Oh, okay. I am on the last page of the report. You want me to go
Mr.
to
July?
page?
If you look at the
Y8.
spine,
Okay.
you'll see Y8.
A.
You're looking specifically for LEA1.
Yeah. I don't seem to have one.
Remember, that's the bundle that has the affidavit of Mr. Nhleko in it.
Yes.
I believe you had it
I've got
previously
it,
when I
I've got
referred
it
to
in
it.
the small bundle. I see 180.
Will somebody help Mr. July, please?
Oh, here is it. Here is it. Yes. And you said page
Page 186.
186.
Now, we've read the conclusion. We don't have to repeat it.
Yep.
And I was specifically concerned with how you came to the conclusion that one of the three of them, in terms of your recommendation, might be guilty of the charge of defeating the ends of justice or obstructing the administration of justice.
Yeah. Chair, you would recall the evidence is we interviewed Mr. Kruger, and we interviewed Mr. Kruger 3 times. Then we interviewed Mr. Sissoko, and we interviewed Mr. McBride. When we came to the issue of the deletion of information in the report, in particular with Mr. Kuba, Mr. Kuba understood his analysis and say, I had to change my analysis of the report because I was convinced otherwise, right? Then Mr. Sissoko says, I have never seen the report. Mr. McBride adopted the same attitude that I've never seen the first report. So there is a denial of the existence of the first report. There is denial by all of them. Even here, they came to this commission. Not even a single one of them said we deleted the information. What you are told is that the analysis was changed because we reconsidered the evidence because the evidence was unsustainable. That's what you are told. But that part cannot be divorced to the fact that the report that was filed on the 22nd, if you accept that the one that was filed on the 22nd was final, you will make that conclusion, Chair, having read the statutes and everything. If it was final, now the question should be, why was it retrieved? To do what? Now, when you look at the conduct of what happened when it is retrieved, not only is the analysis that is being changed. I have no issue when a person changing his mind because he has been influenced or convinced genuinely so otherwise. But I've got an issue with a person who's going to delete evidence in order to justify the analysis. Let me give an example of the deletion of evidence. Madilongwe is dead. Nobody doesn't know that he's a dead man. You can't go and delete information that was said by Madilongwe without Madilongwe's permission. And you can't get it because he's dead. So that information will sit there, but you may have a different view and understanding and analysis. When you look at Madilongwe's statement, leave it the way it is. Don't tamper with that evidence, because it is evidence.
Well, I'm happy that we have got to this point, because it's one of the important points about this matter.
Yes.
My understanding when the IPID witnesses gave evidence, and my understanding up to now, and I raised it with Mr. Nhlego a few days ago, was that when you talk about alteration and changing of the report, when the discussion about alteration or changing of the report does not include interfering or changing anything in the statements of witnesses. And I just want to check whether that's your understanding as well, or it's a different, you have a different understanding.
I listened to them misleading you, Chair.
Yes.
I listened to that.
Yes.
Misleading you that all what they changed was the analysis.
Yes.
They were lying.
Yes.
What they did, they went to the statement of Madilongwe. Madilongwe said, I pick up a phone. I phoned my bosses to say, here are the Zimbabwean police. They want to get into the country. Do I allow them? They're saying they want to go to Dramat. These bosses, they say, no. Speak to, please call him. They give him permission. He calls Dramat. And he says, there are people who want to come and see you in the country. That on its own is a problem, because if you are coming to the country, you must produce document, not a call. You don't call people, right? You come with valid documents. You must go through the process. Now there's a call. That information, Mr. Chair, is deleted and is said by Madilongwe. It's not an analysis.
Well, where do we go in the bundles to
Just go to the
see
deletion.
that part? But maybe before you go, you go to the bundle. Mr. Madilonga's statement,
Yes.
that you say they changed, was it handwritten or was it typed?
Madilongwe had 3 statements. The one statement Madilongwe made when in 2011, during the internal disciplinary hearing. And that statement is the statement that Kuba says, I called Madilongwe. I said, Madilongwe, you are lying. I read your statement. This information that is contained in the statement is a lie. I've got a warrant of arrest. I'm going to arrest you for lies. Madilongwe says, no, you can come, let's talk. Madilongwe goes and speaks with Kuba. The statement that was taken by Kuba now is the typed one.
Yeah.
That's the second statement. So you have a 2011 statement.
Which is handwritten.
Which is handwritten.
Yeah.
Then you have a 2011, which is typed.
Yes.
And then you have another one, where Madilongwe says, I am confirming that the landline that you mentioned, that's towards the end, the landline that you mentioned I think during, there was a number that was used. That landline is the landline that he used to call Dramat. So you've got 3.
But the one that is typed,
Yes.
which is, I think you say that's the one that was changed.
Yes,
Yeah. Oh, did Mr.
Remember,
Madilonga sign that one as well?
he signed.
He signed it.
He signed all the statements. Madam.
Yeah. Were they, that particular one, because you say that's the one that was changed, did he initial every page or only sign the last page?
Chair, this is what happens.
Yeah.
The statement, it's written. It's copied, because that's what they do. They copy the statements to the report, right? So you copy the statement to the report. And then, when the second report was written, you go to the statement that has been copied to the report. Remember now, you don't have to go to the statement itself and delete the statement. You now go to the report. And in your report, where you mention that this is what Matilongwe said, he said 1, 2, 3, 4. You then say in the second report, he said 1, 2, 4, 5. You leave out 3. Right.
Yes, but I understand that, but I'm still at the point of saying the typed statement for Mr. Matilonga.
Yes.
Did he sign every page?
Yes,
Or you
I think he
don't
did.
remember that, whether he did or not?
I think he did.
You think he did? Okay, we
think
can
he did.
check in due course.
I think he did.
And if he did, the only way in which anybody could change that statement, I guess, would have to be by hand.
Yeah.
By hand. That's not what happened.
Yes. No.
That's not
Chair.
what happened.
No. Chair,
Yeah.
that's why I was saying, Chair,
Yeah,
I write a statement. I
Yeah.
type it, whether it's handwritten or it's typed.
yeah,
I give it to you, to
Yeah.
whoever.
Yeah.
That person copies the statement to the report.
yeah,
He writes the report
yeah,
and Sandile says he was at the State Commission on the 31st of March.
yes,
Of July. Why can I say March? 31st of July, 2020,
yes,
right? You write that in the report
yes,
because there's a statement which
Yes.
says that.
yes,
But now, because the 31st of July, I've done something somewhere. You want to remove the 31st in the report now, not in the statement.
yeah,
You're removing in the report and you write 29.
yeah. Okay,
Yes.
no, I think we are getting to the important parts. So, looks like we are moving back to what I understood to be the position. So physically, the typed statement of Mr. Matilonga is not interfered with.
It's not, no, it's not
Yes.
interference.
But
not interfered.
what has happened is that there is a change
Yes,
of what Mr. Kuba says
Said.
in his report
yes,
about what the statement says.
yes, Chair.
And you say he stops referring to certain
Yes,
parts of the statement.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's fine. So, as I see it, tell me what you say to this. So, the objectionable conduct from your point of view is actually that in his report, Mr. Kuba doesn't give what you consider a fair summary of Mr. Matilonga's statement.
Yes.
That's yes. And that's where the issue is.
That's where the issue is, Chair.
Yes, okay, Mr. Hallin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, if I understand correctly, your true complaint relates not to the fact that the docket was in any way tampered with, or any statement within the docket was tampered with. Your true complaint relates to the fact that the two IPID reports, what we've referred to as the first report and the second report, that insofar as the first report was concerned, the information capturing or summarizing what was contained in the docket had been removed and was not accurately reflected in the second report.
Chair, I will respond by saying, when you read the documents, you realize how Kuba used to write his reports. He would put the statement the way it was said to him. And the way, when you read what is the statement says, he would write exactly what that person says. It may be in a summary form, but it contains exactly what that person says. Now, the complaint is that Kuba, although they did not touch the docket, I will tell you why they could not touch the docket. They could not touch the docket because it would seem that they were running out of time.
They were running?
Running out of time.
Okay.
This issue has been outstanding, Chair. The issue comes from 2010. Even long before the former minister, Mr.
Ntlego, yeah.
2010. That's when this whole thing started. And Parliament raising issues. What happened to the killing of the people of Zimbabwe? Right? Then, what then happened is Kuba changes the statement in his report because they could not be able to remove the information. Why I'm saying they were running out of time. On the 7th of March, the docket is collected from Van Zyl. In fact, let me say Van Zyl because it was sent to Advocate Chauke. Advocate Chauke gave the docket to Van Zyl, who happens to be his junior. Van Zyl is looking, before he looked at the document, the docket is being collected. I remember, Chair, you asked a question to Mr. McBride. When you were briefed, McBride, were you briefed verbally? There was no information that was given to you. McBride said, I can't remember. When I've got opportunity, I will deal with that issue. Now, talking back to the docket, you ask a question. When the docket comes back to you, did it have the report? He says, I can't remember. You persist with the question. No. The docket, the report, when it goes to the NPA, when the docket goes to the NPA, has the report. You ask that question. And you say, but when it comes back, isn't it that the report must be there? He says, no, it was not there. That's the version that. So, now from the 7th of March, then you have an information note on the 10th of March, 3 days after the docket has been received. It's an information note to Minister Mthethwa saying, Minister, the investigation is complete.
It would have been Mr. Ntlego at the time.
No, Mthethwa.
Is it
Ntlego
not
started in
2014?
May.
Is it not 2014? Oh, in March.
March.
Oh, okay.
No, it's Mthethwa.
Okay. It
March
was
is
still
still
Mthethwa.
Mthethwa.
Yes, okay, yes, yeah.
Yes. He writes to Minister Mthethwa to say the investigation is now complete. All what we are busy doing, we are analyzing the evidence.
Analyzing?
The evidence.
The evidence.
So meaning that we are still going to submit the report. Now the investigation is complete.
Yeah.
This is the person who said, I ordered Kuba and Sissoko to do further investigations. He says that to you on the 17th, 18th, when he was here in April. I think he was here in April 11, 12, 13th of April. He says to you, I ordered Kuba and Sissoko to do further investigation. So that further investigation, Chair, would have happened on the 18th and the 19th. Because on the 10th, McBride unequivocally says the investigation is complete. McBride does not show you anything which says this is what we investigated during that time, right? It's the same docket. Now it goes to the importance of the report. Because you are told that these reports are being ignored. But these reports are influential. They are influential in a number of reasons. Because the person, even if you read the docket, you decide to read the docket, you can't avoid to say, what is IPID saying? What is IPID saying? So if the NPA can take a decision and that decision is not because they are bound by the docket, by the report. They can take a different decision because the recommendations are not binding. Why don't you leave that docket and the report of the 22nd of January? Because NPA is going to be able to determine that this evidence is unsustainable. NPA can reach that conclusion, that the report that is submitted by Cuba, which say we must charge these people, is unsustainable. Why does it take you to go and take the docket to analyze when that very analysis that you are doing is going to be done again by the NPA?
Thank you, Mr.
Well,
Chair.
yes.
I actually asked a much simpler question, and I'm not sure that my question was in fact answered. I was trying to summarize what I understood to be your case insofar as the defeat in the ends of justice was concerned. My question was specifically, if I understand correctly, you're not making the point that anything in the docket itself had been deleted or tampered with. That's point number one. Correct?
That's the
Your,
point, yes.
your assessment of the situation as outlined in your report is that the defeating of the ends of justice stems from the fact that the first report accurately captures the docket, whereas the second report has information that has been taken out and doesn't accurately capture the docket. Is that correct?
Yep.
Now, on your understanding, of course, it would be, if that amounted to defeating the ends of justice, and we'll get to how you get there in a moment, but if that were accurate, it would mean that if an investigator were to give an inaccurate account of what is contained in the docket, forget about, I'm talking generally, he gives a final report, but it's not an accurate reflection, or it's not a fair reflection of what is contained in the docket. And he comes to the conclusion that there's no case to be met or no charges to be brought against the person who has been investigated. On the argument that you're now presenting, it seems to suggest that that would amount to defeating the ends of justice as well.
It's
Is that correct?
misleading. When you deliberately, intentionally remove information which would assist the person who has to make a decision, that is misleading. There's an intention, and that, what is the justice that is supposed to happen? The justice that is supposed to happen is that people who are involved in the rendition must be brought to book. That is the justice. Now, when you do something to defeat that end of justice to happen, you write a report, much as the report is a recommendation, but you deliberately write information which seeks to mislead the person who is going to make a decision. That, Chair, it's a problem. Remember, I started by saying these are Section 28 investigations. They are not just any type of report. Yes.
Well, let me put to you what I put to Mr. Nhlego. Where the investigator places before the NPA his report, part of which seeks to summarize what is in the statements of the witnesses in the docket, but has, in part at least, wrongly or inaccurately or inadequately summarized the contents of statements in the docket. But he makes available to the NPA those statements as well,
Yes.
which have got the information that he has not correctly or adequately captured in the report. And he knows, because I take it they know, that the decision maker at the NPA is going to read the statements in the docket, which has got the information that he might not have correctly captured in his report. And therefore, the decision maker will still have a complete picture.
Yes.
How do you say that person intends to defeat the ends of justice?
No, you started by saying a person inaccurately summarizes the report.
Yes, yes.
But I'm saying that was not an inaccurate recording of the summary of the statements. It was an intentional deletion of information with the intention to mislead.
Yeah.
That is the conclusion that we came to.
Yes.
We said this was done intentionally. It's not a person who is writing the report, because it happens. We do record things sometimes not accurately. I have no qualms with that.
Yes, yes.
But if you look at the pattern,
Yes.
how it was done, the intention was to mislead. Now here's the part. Do you do that successfully? You can't say when you are found to have been misled, you say now simply because there were statements that were included. You didn't succeed to mislead, but you were misleading in your report. We came to the conclusion. Other person can come to a different conclusion. We came to the conclusion, starting from why was it in the first place retrieved, the docket? Why was it retrieved? And not be left with the NPA to make their own decision and read the very information and come to a conclusion. You decide to take it in order to sanitize the report.
You see, you may be right in how you view it.
Yes.
You might not be right.
Yep.
If the decision maker, if to the knowledge of the investigator, the decision maker at NPA was going to rely only on the report and the statements would not be there, I think there would be quite a strong case. Now, I'm not saying there is no case for what you're saying, but I'm exploring.
Yes.
How, as I understand the position, the decision maker at the NPA would not be expected to make a decision without reading the statements. He or she may read both the report and the statements, but I don't believe they would read the report without the statements. I think they would rather read the statements without the report if they were pressed for time or anything like that, because their decision must take into account the statements. Now, what I'm saying is, when you know that the decision maker will see all the information that is in the statements, how can you intend whatever you do in your report, because you know he will read the statements, how can you be intending to make him arrive at a wrong decision by not telling him information that he will see anyway in the statements? That's what I would like you to deal with.
I know, Chair, that is problematic, but the
yes.
question could be as well, what could be the reason then for a person to delete that information? You already have it in the report.
Yes.
What you need to do is to analyze your report and change your analysis.
Yes.
But leave the information. The question should be, why deleting it in the first place?
No, I accept that one may have to look at why was it deleted, but I think you must tell me if I misunderstood what you said. I think you and I are quite close in terms of saying, on the face of it at least, if he knows that the decision maker will read these statements, therefore the decision maker will see all the information that he might not have included in the report.
Yes.
On the face of it, one would expect that he would say, but there is no point in deleting this information in order to influence him to arrive at a certain decision when he is going to see this information in the statements anyway, you know. Of course, if you deal with somebody that you know is not going to read the statement, is just going to read your report, that might be different.
I was going there, Chair, to say we don't know.
Yes.
We don't know.
Yes.
Anything is possible.
Yes.
Anything is possible because there is no reason why I would want to delete information if I don't think that at some point this person may decide to read only my report. Because my report summarizes the statements of these people. Otherwise, there is no reason why I should delete this information. If I don't think that my report is going to influence you, I would not even delete it.
Yeah.
But if I believe that you may look at my report and be convinced by my report.
Yeah.
We came to the conclusion. Another person can come to a different conclusion.
Yes.
That is the conclusion based on the facts that were before us.
Yes. Well, of course, whether the reason for changing that part of the report or deleting certain information in the report, whether the reason was the one that you concluded was the reason or is another one, that one might involve looking at the actual information deleted and hearing what the reason is that was advanced. But I think through this discussion, I certainly understand. I think you understand where I was coming from. Yeah.
I do.
Yes,
I do.
okay, thank you. Mr. Hurley,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I see we are at 1. I'm not always very good with estimating time about how long anything would take. But the one thing I think has happened is that we certainly have covered quite important parts as far as I'm concerned.
I think so as well.
It might not be everything, but certainly quite some part. I think we should take the lunch adjournment. Mr. July and Mr. Ngugaitobi, there is a matter coming up at 2. It's an application. It's a certain application. When we come back, maybe I could just deal with that because I don't think it should take long, and then we continue. But I might be told something that might suggest that we should finish first and they should argue that application after. Is that fine with you?
Yes, it will be fine for us, Chair.
Yes.
Is there intention to finish Mr. July's evidence this afternoon?
Yes, certainly from my side. But having said that, you know what I've just said about my poor estimation skills.
No, the only reason I ask is whether we should make a provision to be,
For tomorrow.
well, for Monday.
Or no, or today is Friday.
Yes.
No, I don't think
Monday's
you
out of the
should. No, I don't think. I don't think you should. If you ask me, and again, I warn that sometimes my estimation is bad. I don't see that we should take an hour after with him after lunch. I'm looking at Mr. Harley.
I'm keenly aware of your stare, Mr. Chairperson.
Yes.
It's difficult to estimate because I would have thought that we would take no more than 2.5 hours at most.
Yeah.
Possibly even including with the
Yes.
potential re-examination.
Yeah.
But that clearly hasn't happened.
Yes.
I had a number of questions that I'd wish to ask.
Yeah.
We've begun to delve into matters relating to the content of the report
Yeah.
that were not necessarily part of my
Yeah.
initial questioning.
Of course, as I said, the commission is not here to determine
Absolutely.
whether his conclusions and findings are right or wrong, that kind of thing. So that ought to shorten the proceedings, but we do need to look at what needs to be looked at
Thank you,
properly. But I certainly think we will finish today. I hope we don't have to go up to 4 o'clock to finish. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, let's take the lunch adjournment now, and then we'll resume at 2, and then I will then indicate whether I'll hear the argument in that matter or whether we complete and finish first with this one. We adjourn.